Desire is such an awesome, powerful, controlling element of life. Maybe it is the controlling element of life. And a beautifully engineered controlling element of life. And nothing wrong with it. It's obviously the desire to live that gives rise to many other desires, including the very basic creature desires of the desire to be fed, the desire to be sheltered, the desire for security, the desire for procreation, and the desire for power, the desire for knowledge, more and more subtle levels of desire. There's a certain point in mysteriously chosen lifelines where there arises the desire for what gets called enlightenment or truth or self-knowledge. Papaji has said this desire is of an altogether different order. And it's true. All the other desires can be satisfied by some activity of mind, so that the impulse, the hunger impulse that arises, then naturally gives rise to the desire to be fed. And then this gives rise to the activity, generally unconscious activity, of what it takes to be fed. That's just at the creature level. All creatures, all kingdoms. Nothing wrong with that. Natural. But once the creature has been fed and sheltered and matured to a certain degree, then it's actually possible for what gets called higher levels of desires, but let's just call them more subtle level rather than higher and lower. Just more subtle, that's all. So the desire for knowledge and the desire for power and the desire for understanding. These are more subtle, they aren't higher. And yet they are still of a certain order, so they are fed by activity of mind. And they're satisfied by activity of mind. And then in this blessed lifeline where there arises the desire for enlightenment, of course there are many attempts to feed that desire in the normal way that other desires have been fed. And surely you have experienced some of that, at least in this week. And the futility of that. That no matter how much you try, no matter how much you figure, no matter how much you get what it is being said or has been said, whatever you try to do, which is mind activity, you cannot find what is called self or God or truth. Because desire is really projecting into the future. The impulse of hunger may be appearing in the present, but the desire is to get something so that in the future, whether that future be the next moment or the next 10 years, that hunger won't go unsatisfied. That's very basic, isn't it? So the desire for awakening, the desire for enlightenment is also projected into the future, because that's how we know desire. And that's okay. That's where you find out that that future is always just in the future. And that this is not like those other desires. This is of another order. It will not be satisfied by the future. It will not be satisfied by anything gross or subtle, even the most subtle, exquisite thing. And by thing, I mean anything that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Anything that appears and then is subject to disappearance. So I mean states of mind, thoughts, understandings, insights, experiences, sensations, conclusions, on and on. This realization itself, that this desire for freedom, for truth, for God, will not be satisfied by anything in the future, is what most people avoid, because it is so radical, because it means that this desire for truth or enlightenment or God is not just a toy of your mind. It's not just a thing to enrich your life or your sense of yourself or to feed your feelings, your high feelings, and keep your low feelings at bay. This is what I mean when I say that disillusionment is essential. The realization that no matter what I try to do, I cannot get it. And if it appears to me, I cannot keep it. I cannot capture it. And I desire to. When Papaji says stop, or Ramana says be still, or Gangaji says just experience what is occurring, it's an invitation to actually turn the mind back into that desire rather than projecting it into the future of how the desire will be satisfied. To actually burn in the impulse, and the impulse can be quite strong. People have asked me questions about food or sex or power, and always I have said, these impulses, nothing wrong with them. They're actually beautiful aspects of nature. But if what you desire is really the truth, it is very useful when an impulse, a sexual impulse, or a hunger impulse, or a power impulse arises, at least once, and maybe only once, is necessary. To not allow the mind to go into activity of how to satisfy that. To actually turn the mind back into that gross order of desire, so an experience can occur, so that one can see that what has been leading or directing the life unconsciously, that one in that moment can recognize choice, can recognize that the impulse, as powerful and beautiful it is, and a beautiful servant to the continuance of life, does not in reality have to direct this life. It can be met for what it is. Desire, impulse, energy, sensation, shaking, fear, despair, lost, peace. So I have noticed in speaking to people how this desire for enlightenment gets you to a certain point, and it got you here. So I bow to it. But to give it up, which is what Papaji is inviting you to do, and he says to call off the search, to call off this continual mind-generated, which has to be based on the past, because that's how the mind gets its information of what is needed, what it looks like, what the feeling is, how you will know, and how to keep it once it's attained. To call that off simply means to be present right here, right now. So you have heard this many times. Be here now. Just be in the now. And then there's a desire to be here now. And that desire has some future picture, what it will look like when you're really here now. This is the power of the mind. To really just be here regardless of what impulses are arising.
I have this question about wants.
Wants? Like desires?
Like desires. And what to do with them.
What do you want?
I want to not be so wanting.
And if you got that, what would you have then?
More peace.
More peace. So maybe you just want peace.
Yes.
Where's peace?
Anywhere.
Oh, great. Then you have what you want.
Well, that was easy.
It is easy.
Yeah. I notice when my mind talks about these wants that I leave the present.
You leave the peace.
I leave
to
the
go
peace.
in search of peace.
Thank you. Yes.
Or something, go in search of something that could give you more peace, or permanent peace, or certain peace.
The illusion of...
Go in search of the illusion.
Of,
that's right. That's it. That's what Maya is. That's the play of the mind. That's right. That's right.
Okay, this
you
is
said
getting
it.
easier.
That's very good. Yes. That's the secret. It gets easier and easier. The challenges get harder and harder. And the willingness to meet each challenge, no matter how difficult. I mean, what is harder than the challenge of death? But really, peace is that death you're speaking of.
I just noticed my mind doing this very funny thing.
Yes.
That when we were talking just a minute ago, I got it. It was all very clear, and now I'm trying to get it.
Recall it. Yes. Hold it. Remember it.
Yeah, because it makes sense, but...
So what is it you want?
Peace.
And where will you look for that?
Anywhere, nowhere.
Yeah, well, so you know where you have looked for it. Will you stop looking?
Will I?
Right now, just as an
Briefly.
experiment.
Yes.
Just for this moment. Because I'm only talking about this moment ever. Nothing else is relevant. Just right now, will you stop looking? Is peace absent?
No.
That's right.
Great.
Anything else?
No.
Great.
Thank you.
You are beautiful. Peace is beautiful, isn't it? So vibrant. People are afraid of peace because somebody said the other day, boring. Perhaps it's boring. Yes, there's a fear of beauty and a fear of peace and a fear of love and a fear of truth and a desire for peace and a desire for beauty and a desire for love and a desire for truth. Anything? Something? What is it?
Well, it's basically the same question.
Well, let's go at it again. Maybe this time
Okay.
it'll really penetrate.
Okay. So, I do have desires. and I don't think when I have them that they all lead back to peace, but they might.
You mean following the desires will take you to peace?
No, that's what's underlying the desire.
That's right.
So that,
Yeah, who could
that's
think
actually
it?
likely.
Yes.
So I have these illusions that if I attain certain desires, then I'll have.
So what's the solution to that? What did you just discover?
That I already have it.
Yes, but now you remember that. And where is it in the memory? Then that memory becomes a superimposition of, well, I am peace. Well, I have peace. Well, I'm always peace. But you're not. You're lying. Right?
Right, because then I go right back to desire.
Yes.
I'm
So-
frustrated.
Good. Now we're getting, this is good.
Well, I've been there a lot.
Yes, that's right. So this is now getting closer. So the frustration.
Okay.
Can you let that get bigger?
Yes.
Really bigger. And just let your consciousness fall into it. Frustration or anger is usually defending something, some other emotion.
Fear.
Yeah, okay. So fear. There's fear. Can you let your consciousness fall into this fear?
Mm-hmm.
Right now? Good. What's under that?
Fear.
More fear? Then go deeper, all the way in.
There's the still place.
Still place. Is this a still place that is flat? Or is this a still place that is vibrating?
It's alive.
It's alive. Excellent. Good. If it were a still place that were flat, as in depression or despair, because this often appears under fear, not always, as you just showed, a hopelessness, this kind of existential angst, then it's possible also to experience that just as you experience so clearly frustration, fear, despair. Now, in this stillness that is revealed, is there peace?
Mm-hmm.
Are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. When you know without a shadow of a doubt that you are this stillness, that you are this awareness, then it doesn't matter what's on the surface. It can feel good or it can feel bad. There can be confusion or there can be absolute clarity. What's that?
So when there's these choices to make,
Like what?
As being a human,
Yes.
you know, by whether to say yes or no, and
How
go
do those
here or
choices
there.
get made?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I'm very unclear. Sometimes.
Yes.
So I want clarity.
Yes. Excellent. So you know, just as this man spoke of, you have looked lots of places for clarity. But you can stop and look directly into the unclarity. Can you feel that, experience that unclarity, that cloudiness, that right now you can?
Yes,
Excellent. So
Like
just
ping pong ball.
Yeah, so this is a kind of like death. Like the experience of death, only now it's cloudiness, unclarity. So you forget whatever you have learned about that, or what it means, or how to transcend that, or how to get around that.
Right.
Just be that unclarity, so that you will know directly what unclarity is in this moment.
I'm there.
So you drop your consciousness fully into it. There's something still like me and unclarity. So you just let the unclarity have you totally.
I kind of go back and forth, like I'm in the unclarity, and then I sort of drop down, and I was looking for unclarity again.
Yes. So, because unclarity wasn't there, right?
Right.
Yes. This is exactly what happened to you. Because the experience of what is always here is so unconfirmed in our culture, in our lives, in our churches, that we don't believe it. We don't think it could be that easy. So then we began searching again for what's wrong. So in an instant of actually letting unclarity be there, there was no unclarity. And then you got busy to find it again. And then there would be an instant, okay, I found it, great.
Right.
And then there's none. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yes, because what happens is this is it. Who you are is always here, clearly here, peacefully here, in stillness here. Whatever appears to obstruct that, whether it is frustration or fear or despair or doubt, if that is met rather than tried to get rid of, then the spaciousness, not the spaciness, but the spaciousness of who you are is clearly here. Is this true?
Yes.
Are you sure?
I just had the experience of it.
Great, good. Because I don't want to start feeding you lines. Do you follow this?
It's great, thank you.
Yes. It's deeper too now. I was speaking the other night about deeper, and somebody said, "What in the world do you mean, deeper?" And that's really a good question. Because I don't mean what you think I mean by deeper. I don't mean like heavier or more still. What I really mean is spacious, but not spacey. Because we've tried to be spacious and we get like woo-woo. Spacious, not getting like anything. Less present to who you think you are. More present to who you are. That's deeper, and that's endlessly deep. Because then you find yourself everywhere. In every mind state, in every emotion, in every body. Naturally. One of the trickiest areas of spiritual understanding, and the one that has perhaps been most misunderstood, is around this issue of desire. So I can't remember what the Western religions say about it, because I put that aside at a certain point and really took on what the Eastern, or what Buddhism really is what I knew, said about it. And that's basically that desire causes suffering. Therefore, in my understanding, that meant desire is bad. Therefore, I had to start desiring to get rid of desire. And that was my full desire. And every time I suffered, there was proof that I was desiring something. And so my desire to get rid of desire grew. And what a weight was carried, until I reached a point where I was overcome with the futility of trying to cut desire at its root through meditation practice, through retreats, through mindfulness. Just overcome with my failure in that. And all I desired at that point was a teacher. That's all I knew. And a teacher appeared to me, my teacher, Papaji. And he told me, if you desire freedom above everything else, then that takes care of all the rest. That takes care of all the desires. And since I recognized him as my teacher, I listened very carefully, and I surrendered to the simple, vast, ancient desire for freedom. And it takes care of all the other desires, but not in the way that is mentally understood. So I'd like to speak today just briefly about desire and desire. So we can talk about egoic desire and true desire, or we can talk about fixated desire and natural desire, or we can talk about natural cellular desire to live, to be fed. But it seems like if we speak about it very simply, we can talk about desire that doesn't cause trouble and desire that causes trouble. Without even making the trouble-causing desire wrong, just in terms of observing, just to be able to skillfully tell the truth. There's a kind of maturity then that can arise just in simply telling the truth. If there is a desire for love, there's no trouble. But if there is a desire that love be manifest in a particular way, at a particular time, it's trouble. Because if it's not, there's suffering. And if it is, there's a belief that it came about from that desire, so then there's a further desire to keep it that way, or hang on to it, or not let it go, or protect it. So it feeds on further desire. The desire for love, without any form or formlessness, is truly the desire for yourself. There's no problem, because love is here. But it may not be here in the way you think it should be here, or have learned or been taught that it will be here. There's a desire for peace that is beautiful and true. But if it's a desire for peace on your terms, in the way you envision it, and when you envision it, then this is a troublesome desire. There's a desire for justice. It's natural, the desire for justice. But if this desire for justice is tinged with revenge and hatred, it's troublesome. Or fear, it's troublesome. is a desire for freedom. But if there's an idea of what freedom feels like, an idea that freedom can be bound, then it's a troublesome desire. What have I left out? Truth? Yes, truth is the desire for truth is a beautiful desire. When this arises in consciousness, the desire for truth, this is a momentous evolutionary event. But if it is just tossed into the old cauldron of truth, then it's me and my truth. Truth the way I see it, or truth the way I think it should be. Then it's very troublesome to the whole world. The more profound the desire, the more potential for the trouble. But the truth is that these desires do arise, and that's no problem. The problem is what the mind, or what the understanding, or what the conditioning does with the desire, really in the hope of escaping the power of the desire. The desire for love is powerful. Desire for freedom is huge. For truth, for peace, huge. And the power itself is a kind of torture. And in the desire to escape that discomfort, there is a tendency to go into formulating how to get, how to keep what it looks like. And I'm not talking against visualization and formulation and goal keeping, and that all has its place. Truly, it all has its place. They're great mind trainings and very useful at a certain time. But for our purposes, for what we are doing here together today, in this offering of what my teacher gave to me, offering it to you, then what I'm speaking about is visualization in this context is useless, is in the way, is a distraction. True peace, true love, true truth, true justice, true freedom, true you cannot be visualized. World peace, yes, visualize it. It's useful, keeps the mind, it's a good point for the mind. World justice, visualize it. But the justice, the truth, the love, the peace that is eternal, that is here right now, that is present in the midst of the experience of the lack of love, or the experience of war, or the experience of injustice, or the experience of ego. That's what must be communicated. That's the task that I've been given and you have been given, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. So none of the words that I have said, even though they're pointing to that communication, are the communication. So it doesn't matter if you don't remember a thing I just said. It can be even useful if you don't remember a thing I just said. What matters is being conscious of consciousness, not as anything that can be visualized or formulated or objectified or found or grasped or understood. Closer to the bone than any of that. more immediate, more present, more you than your name, than your body, than your views, than your hopes, than your fears, more you. And it's here. And we are here in these meetings to discover its presence, to be true to its presence, and to discover its presence when this meeting is over. And discover that whatever is occurring in the inside worlds or the outside worlds, it's present. It's present. And this is a discovery that no one has ever adequately described, although we fall to our knees at the attempts of description, at the sutras and songs and scriptures and poems and paintings and music and literature and sunsets and glances. We fall to our knees at these glimpses. It's here. And it's calling you. Truly. Sometimes in obnoxious ways. Truly. And sometimes in the sweetest, finest, most refined, most subtle, secret ways. The whole range is the call of you to yourself. So I welcome you here where you are as consciousness, as love, as peace, as justice, as freedom, as a totality of being.
I can see and feel how much this idea of my own personal freedom was such a trap I didn't even realize I was in.
Yes, how could you realize it until you see it as a trap?
Yeah, and until something has called me even more loudly and hit me even harder.
Well, this is the beauty. This is the privilege of personal freedom. And I don't just mean personal freedom because you're not in jail, because you can also find personal freedom in jail, prison. But that's the privilege of it, that you recognize I'm free, personally. I get to think what I want to think. I get to love who I want to love. I get to eat what I want to eat, relatively speaking. And then you realize there are limits to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a power. It's a huge power, and not everybody on the earth is granted this power. So it's a power to be thankful for, and it's a power that's limited.
And what I feel too is that it was so easy to use the nothing matters as a way to reinforce that personal freedom.
To indulge
Yeah.
the personal fixation.
And it,
Yes.
and
And that's not freedom at all.
No, it's such a trap.
That's the trap.
That is
That's the
such a
cheese in the middle of the trap. And it gets the rat every time. 'Cause it's a very sweet cheese. Maybe cheese with a little peanut butter on top of it. No rat can resist that. That's the truth. It's very, very important that you're saying this. Especially here in America, in this affluent, rich, free nation. There's so much suffering with this personal freedom. So, personal freedom is beautiful. It's a privilege, it's an honor, it's a power. But it has limits. And pretty soon, if those limits are not seen, then you are bitten by personal freedom itself. But something else occurs then. In a dream that's different from other dreams, you hear some invitation to open. Because that's what devotion is. It's really opening beyond belief. You know, we use words like love, but it's of a different order. It's more ruthless, and it's like a door closes and you can never be free of devotion. It's like you willingly go into some place that is beyond personal freedom. You go into, you have the choice, maybe. If you're unlucky, you have the choice. If you're very lucky, all of a sudden you just are there, like some quantum leap. But freedom, personal freedom and the realization of freedom is the ground that allows this call. This also doesn't appear to everyone. It's not necessary. But when it does, what will you do with it then?
I don't know. But
that's good.
I feel,
that's good.
Okay.
I don't know. It's very good. Very good. Very good. Because if you do anything with it, you are assuming control. And it's not about that. It's not about that.
And that is what I feel in the past. I've been sort of the lover with the wandering eye.
Yes. Yes, that feels free, right?
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
I could go at any minute.
That's right. Yeah. So that's right. So there's a kind of, and always kind of checking out to see, is this a better deal?
Yeah.
Is this a better deal? Until finally you see the cycling of that and the suffering of that and the frustration of that and the bondage of that. And someone comes and says, "Will you marry me?" Oh my God. You mean give up my personal freedom? Well, if it's an open marriage, or I'll marry you till something better comes along. So this call to devotion, it's your own heart calling you. It's truth calling you. And there are many false lovers that come and dance in front of truth, your own heart, and say, "I'm a better deal." But you followed those enough that you have grown out of them. That's the power of this invitation. Because there's an appropriate time to try everything, everybody. I know in some South Sea Island cultures, I'm not even sure if it's true, I think it was later discredited, but anyway, it makes a good point, that, adolescents experiment sexually quite a lot. It's natural, there's the hormones coursing through the body, and there's all kinds of inclinations, and it's natural. And then there's a certain point where it's finished. But in our particular society, you can't even look like you're not an adolescent anymore. I mean, the whole deal is you gotta stay adolescent. That's I mean, you can get wise and old and elder, but still adolescent in there, in terms of what you can do, in terms of your sense of yourself or your power or your freedom. And adolescence is beautiful, and it is powerful, and it is outstanding, but it's limited. And if you believe it to be the end-all, you continue to recycle in an adolescent dream and are bound by that dream. And certainly the United States is a great collective, national example of that. Maybe growing out of it, but just growing out of it, just in the last 10 years. Maybe, we'll see. Just could be a latency period. We will see. But this is what you're speaking of. There's something bigger, something more limitless than personal freedom. This you have to discover. Yes. Because if you know that, I mean, and it is said, and it is true, but if you somehow know that, there's a clinging to that that keeps the mind in control still. It's like, because of course, there has been massive abuse in the past. So if you can recognize that you aren't surrendering your heart, what you're surrendering is your mind. That your heart remains intact and yours, and pure and deep. That's what's feared, that you'll surrender your mind. But because you have held on to your mind, you have been brainwashed by culture, by teachers, by parents, by friends, by lovers, by traditions. If you just let it go, just let it go, then you will know directly what is closer than any teaching or any teacher or any tradition or any culture. But you will know it directly, not through your mind, not getting there through your mind with the safety of, it will be my own heart. You don't know that. You have to discover that, or it's just an imitation. And you're fed up with imitations. Yes. That's the good news. You're fed up with this burden of imitation. It is a burden. And it needn't be carried. You don't need to be an imitation of something to be who you are. My teacher's message to you is that who you are is and always has been and always will be free. That freedom is not something that can be learned or earned or lost. It is the truth of who you are. The only reason that you don't know this, if you don't know this, is that you believe you are something other than that. And you use experiences and perceptions and thoughts and emotions to prove you are something other than that, when they can just as easily be used as proof that you are that freedom. In other words, most of humankind is walking around upside down, head in the sand, busily searching for the sky, for the nectar, for freedom. It's possible just on hearing the truth to recognize it as so. And in that instant, your mind is flipped upright, inside out. It is possible, if it is not recognized just on hearing the words spoken, that when these words are investigated, there's a realization it is so. And the flip happens. It is also possible, gloriously, to catch it from the person next to you. From the eyes of my teacher, Papaji, or his teacher, Ramana. Since who you are is already freedom itself, you have complete capacity to realize yourself as that. If who you are were a thought or a body, it would be impossible for you to recognize yourself as complete freedom, because no thought is free and no body is free. So I'm not speaking of you as somebody can recognize yourself to be freedom. I'm speaking of you as freedom can recognize yourself to be freedom, and this body that you believe yourself to be has made an appearance in freedom, as it will make a disappearance from freedom. So I want to be very clear about that. I am not offering you bodily freedom. I am not offering you a great city of your body being immortal. I am pointing you to what is already immortal. And I am inviting you to investigate that. If you want the body to be immortal after that investigation, well, there are plenty of people you can go to. That's fine. It's as good an activity as anything else. There's nothing wrong with it. I take my supplements too, of course. But first, recognize what is free, what is already free, already immortal, already who you are, without changing a thing. Because people don't come to see me, at least not the second time, if they're searching for a spiritual path or religion. Because I don't offer that. I don't have that to give you. There are enough wonderful paths out there. You already know how to behave. And you know the results of behaving poorly. You know that. You may be still telling yourself some story about not you or whatever. But you know that. You don't need me to tell you that. What I have appeared to you for is to point out, blessed self, that you are beyond enlightenment. You have to get enlightened to know that. You have to get enlightened and you have to lose enlightenment to know that. Because you are what cannot be gained and cannot be lost. You are freedom itself. If freedom is something that appears, then it will disappear. And it is not free. It's a conditional freedom. It's a freedom of the body, as we have relative freedom of our bodies. But we won't, in the end, we won't have the freedom to walk across the floor because our bodies won't be able to do it at the end of the life story of this particular body. So it's not a true freedom. It's a conditional freedom. based on the functioning of the body. Who you are is freedom itself. And that is non-conditional. It is here right now. Your body is in it. Your thoughts are in it. Your emotions are in it. Your enlightenment is in it. Your ignorance is in it. So you don't even have to wait for enlightenment. From the state of darkest ignorance, from hell itself, you can inquire, what is real? What is the truth? What is eternally here? You understand this? Good, because I've never said it so well. I'm certain of that. And I'm sure the tape broke because it always does when it's just right. So it is not to be memorized, not to be learned. It's to be recognized in this moment. Because it's time. It's time. There's this moment on the planet Earth, and we don't know when the moment will be ended, but it could be soon. So, no time for postponement. There is this moment where there is a crack in the world story, in the collective story, in the earth story, where freedom can recognize itself, where truth can recognize itself here on earth at this time. And it's up to you. It's up to you. It's not up to some Messiah dropping out of the sky. That may happen, but so what? It's up to you. And it's up to you right now. I like to meet around holidays because even if most of our holidays have been trivialized and commercialized and are dismissed or just an excuse to escape reality, they really have at their root, whether they're religious or political, at their root they have the source, the core of what we're speaking about here. And in particular, this holiday of independence, this freedom holiday. So there's the political freedom, which is huge, and the American Revolution, which was huge, is huge in history. And when it meant to speak of inalienable rights, rights that cannot be taken away from you. This is huge, but I'm not really speaking of that. I support that, as most of you know, and do speak of that, and don't want to dismiss its importance or separate it in any way from spiritual inquiry. But deeper than that freedom, closer than that freedom, is the freedom that is spoken of here and that this invitation to you is made from. It's not the freedom of choice, even though I also speak about the freedom of choice a lot. While most species, including the human species, have no experience of choice, there are rare beings who do awaken to the experience of choice, the freedom of choice. And this is wondrous and to be celebrated. But I'm not speaking of that. It's even deeper than the freedom of choice. It's the inalienable truth of who you are, that which you cannot in reality be separate from, which is the freedom to be. I'm not speaking about how you be, because there are those who be very well and overlook this deepest freedom. And there are those who seemingly be horribly and recognize this truth of the deepest freedom. So it is closer than any manifestation of freedom. As wondrous as those manifestations may be, it's closer. Not having to do with politics, not having to do with the physical body, not having to do with circumstances, not having to do with emotions, and not having to do with thoughts. Because all of those can be relatively free. But the truth of who you are is absolutely free, unconditionally free, regardless of conditions, is free. So the reason for our meeting is that may be recognized by you as the truth of who you are. And since I know you to be my own self, your recognition is my recognition. My recognition is your recognition. And I am happy to give you all of my recognition in exchange for your recognition. So that this deepest recognition, this deepest celebration can spread throughout the land. So that all aspects of oneself can recognize oneself as free, impossible to be separate from freedom. And that's the true peace, regardless of the apparent conflict. That is alive and awake as you right now. Whatever is happening with your body, whatever is happening with your emotions, whatever is happening with your thoughts or your circumstances, that is alive and awake as you. So if we can consider the question, what is real freedom? What is true freedom? And if we can discover what it is that we think is freedom and dive deeper than that, what it is we feel is freedom and dive deeper than that, what it is we have been taught is freedom, what it is we experience as freedom, deeper, 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 closer, 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 then we cannot help but recognize it is what is always here. There are circumstances that are not free, and most people in the world suffer those circumstances. There are emotions that are not free. There are experiences that are not free. There are thoughts that are not free. There are bodies that are not free. And everyone has had experience of all of that. The possibility for you is to have the direct experience of what is free, always. We've had great mystics in the past who have shown us this. Some from the depths of dungeons, from the experience of being tortured, killed, martyred, crucified, abandoned, ostracized, burned, hated, ridiculed. Some from the experience of being exalted, worshipped, adored, followed, closer than any of that is the opportunity for you to discover, in this phase of your lifetime, for you to discover what is and always has been free. What is and always is your true face. And to share that, to be that, to celebrate that, to receive that, and to discover, does it have an end? In the turning the mind to discover, does it have an end? Perhaps you will discover apparent end, ending, boundaries. And then you have the opportunity to discover, is that boundary real? Is that ending of the truth of freedom real? There are opportunities throughout life to be challenged. Life is a challenge. However privileged your life may be, there are challenges. And each challenge can reveal deeper the closeness of this freedom, until there is absolute recognition of never, ever having been any separation. Impossible to be truly alienated from the freedom that you are.